Hello again, class. Welcome back. Today we're going to be continuing with form. On Tuesday, you guys were looking at the torsos as I was sketching them out, and your homework was dealing with torsos and form. Today we're going to pick it up, and I'm going to just be showing you guys a little more of the form of a head from a particular angle with the upper part of the body. Some of the important structures that I'm going to need you to look at in terms of what we call the shoulder girdle in the front of the chest. And then I'm going to do something with maybe a seated figure and to show you a little bit about arms and legs on the torsos we've created. And if there's time, I'll do something with some legs. So anyways, if you pull out your handout that I gave you on the first day of the class, it'll look like this. It's going to say assignment 5, and it's going to say on the top of it, form continued. When you look at this and go through this handout, it's going to show you what I just talked about. It's going to show you about the arms being treated as cylinders, legs being treated as cylinders. And so now we're going to connect the cylinder shapes to the torso that you guys are now very familiar with. So we're moving from the bean kind of torso, which was two-dimensional, to now the three-dimensional. And so we're trying to think in terms of tops, fronts, and sides. So anyways, you can go through this at your own leisure, but as I'm just going to flip into one of the pages, but as you go through it is what they're going to do. And what's going to be important with this is when cylinders are drawn as legs, they're doing cross sections above the knee, below the knee, above the ankle, at the shoulder, above the elbow, below the elbow. So they're doing them at those strategic places because if you take an arm, you can take the top part of it and turn it into a cylinder if you get rid of the elbow. And so then if you've got the lower arm as a cylinder and the upper arm as a cylinder, and we'll come back later and add the elbow, it's a lot easier to get the angle of the cylinder and which way it turns in space. So that's crucial that I need you to think of as you go through this. So first thing we're going to do, as I mentioned, is and I'm going to have you draw along as I do this first one especially. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start off here with a ball. And so I'm going to have you all do the same. So you're going to place in a ball. Now, with this ball that you're making, and that I'm trying to get accurate, is once you have it, you want to measure the height and make sure it's the same as the width. So when I look at mine, it's close, but what I am going to do is make it just a shade wider. That's going to be important. It wants to be a ball, so the width wants to be equal to the height. So the one that you're doing at the moment, take your time and try to get that as close as you can. I'm going to measure it one more time and see how close I am. So I got this width and the height is pretty close. So I'm going to keep it the way I've got it. Now, is what we're going to do, if we found the center of this ball, and I'm just going to have you draw a construction line through the center. Now, is what we're trying to do is take flat shapes and turn them into three-dimensional shapes. So one way to do that is now from the center line. Hopefully all of you can see that on the center line. Is it okay? So is what I'm going to do from the center line now. We're going to come up and we're going to turn the front of the face this way. So I got to feel this line rolling over the curve of the ball. So if I kind of imagine this line rolling around the ball like this, I'm going to have you do the same. Now once I get to about here, I'm going to drop a vertical because this is going to be the front of the face. So it's going to be somewhat of a 3/4, maybe a little less. Now, with a head is what will happen is this ball, as I mentioned on earlier when we were doing gestures and proportions, this ball is representing the base of the nose. So the base of the nose is here. And so is what will happen is if we're trying to determine how low is the chin. And it's a third So is what happens is if we go from chin to base of nose to brow of eyebrows, and then here to hairline, I would be all the way up to here. So is what I'm going to do is shrink it just a shade. And so I'm going to make my chin to base of nose to, now I've got that set up as my brow. And now this is the hairline. So I'm going to strike those in so that you can see them. So again, our landmark, and I'm going to show it to you with this little skull that I have here. So is what we're looking for is base of skull is the bottom of the nose. So when you come around here, you're at the base of the skull. If we go from bottom of nose, we should come up and we're at the eyebrow. We come up and we're at this hairline. The hairline is a plane break from the forehead to the cranium. So there's my plane break for the cranium. The brow, there's my plane break, and there's my chin. So again, just to make sure you guys got this right, these are thirds. So 1, 2, 3 equal parts. Okay? So as we begin to structure this, now is what I'm going to do is I'm going to imagine this as a slight curve because I'm going over a ball. My hairline wants to be here, but it's going over a ball. So I'm going to kind of curve it down ever so little like this. On the side, I'm going to make a elliptical shape like this. And it's going to be a little smaller. It's not going to be quite halfway. It's going to be about what I've got. So your midway line should be about where mine is, right in the middle. And this ellipse should be close to what I've got here. So now is what we've got is our midway line. And now we've got our ellipse. And basically on a curved surface, this is going to ultimately become the side plane of the head. And from this angle, it's a little smaller than it is the front. So right away now we can begin to see if I was to kind of angle, like I'm trying to get this go up just a little. And if I roll this down, it'll be like this. The top line of the head would come around from this angle. And my center from this perspective would be about here now. So now I'm going to have the edge of where the jaw is going to hook up. Now some of us will take a top plane on the top of this head like this. Because see, now I'm breaking it using ellipses, it becomes a solid mass. So now we've got a top plane, a side plane, and a front plane. So we've taken a flat two-dimensional circle and turned it into a form. So what we're going to do is I'm saying this is my eyebrows here. So I'm going to make it, I'm going to give it a feel where it's just going up slightly like this and around. So I'm going to wrap this around a little lower. So I'm putting a slight upturn to it, not too much, but a little. And I've got to watch this line because it looks like I'm standing off to the side of this thing, so it's hard to get these little things as accurate as I would like, but yours should work out good. Now, if all goes well, the center of the eye should be about here. It would only go to this construction line, my midway point. So, if I take from chin to the center of eye, if I go up, I should be at the top of the head. So that's pretty close. So is what we've got now. I'm going to clean this up just a little bit. So is what we've got is marking dead center of the eyes. Okay. And this is the brow. If you got it right, that should be your halfway point from the highest point of the head to the chin. Now, as what would normally happen, this eyebrow would stick out ever so little. This line would come, and you might not see it on here because it's so small. But anyways, it would angle out slightly. This line from the brow, there would be an angle at that midway point to my circle or my ellipse going this way. So what would happen is it would go this way, and there'd be an angle going down. That angle is important. That's the turn of the brow. The turn of the brow would stop at the side plane of the head. So it would look like that. This would come in ever so little, and then the cheekbone would pull out ever so little, and then I'm going to connect this to the chin, and I'm going to have it where it would do this, and then on this side of our head, I'm going to place the jaw. The jaw is going to go right up against the edge here of eventually the line where we're going to place the ear, and we'll curve it in like that. So we got the feel of the plane break. The chin roughly would be there. Okay, so now we got our generalized shape for the head. It has a little bit of the angle of the jaw, and we've got the angle. I'm still kind of messing with it. Again, when you're off to the side, I'm trying to have a little angle to the chin going this way. These should too, but I don't think I quite got them that way. So if it's a little off, that's why. Anyways, this is our general structure for the head. Usually at this point then, is what I'm going to do is take the bridge of the nose. The bridge of the nose, I might use it with my other charcoal just so I can get it a little darker, where you can see this a little more accurate. So we got the center of the eyes is coming here. Our break on the structure of the head going that way. Okay. So the bridge of the nose would be here. It'd be about the upper part of the eyelid. So if you look at where the brow line is, I got a real thick line there. You're coming down not quite halfway, but almost. That would be the bridge of the nose. Then we're going to take the angle of the nose and we're going to strike it in. And it's going to come maybe about like that. Okay. So this bridge of the nose that we're making, it's important where it's located. There's an angle between there and this brow, which is the same angle as this. This is a parallel to this, is a parallel to this. So in other words, I'm going to strike them all in dark. There's 1, 2, 3. They're all parallel, if you got the perspective right. This shape I'm placing is known as the glabella, and that's a down plane, and it's between your eyes. I'll talk more about this when we start working more carefully with heads. The underside of the nose, from here again, the base of that would be the base of the nose. So I'm gonna make a slight angle down and then over, and then connect this. So we always put a top part to the nose. The bone of the nose is going to be narrow at the glabella, and it's going to be a little wider at the end. I'm going to put an underplane to it. I'm going to put a slight angle underneath, and then angle it up kind of quickly and bring it to the wing of my nose. I'll get out of your way in a moment. So is what you'll have there when you see it is a little wedge shape. So what I'm doing is creating an angle, trying to turn everything into planes. This is becoming the side of the nose, the turn of the eyebrow, center of the eye would, the edge of the eye would start here. The corner of the eye would be there. Okay, and then we have a little plane underneath the nose that would do this. Okay, so now we've reduced the whole thing to surfaces and planes. With this, eyebrow would make a turn here, would come down a little bit, and there would ultimately be a plane here. And there would be a plane here. So I'm going to strike in the angle like plane hatching, like you might have done when you were in a basic drawing class. So that's being worked out that way. This is this way. The mouth is what would happen is there'd be a curve here. I'm going to put a plane underneath just as a series of lines up against the chin. And of course the mouth would protrude out a little bit and it would curve under. So again, I'm just placing in some broad masses of what it might be, and then of course the curve of the chin. Okay. The mouth would go in here. Now, the parting of the lips is high. I'm going to generalize this. Edge of the lower lip. So, all I did was draw a line to simplify it, put a triangle there, and then pull the lower lip a little bit to the right because of the perspective. If I have it right, the edge of the lower lip from the chin should go to the base of the nose, and that looks pretty accurate. So it would do that. That's the base of the edge of the mouth. So that'll give us the feel of the angle underneath the mouth. I'm not going to break it down any more than this there. If we did place in a feel of an eye, the axis would turn this way. The axis would turn this way. There'd be a slight angle. I'm just putting it an oval shape. So the axis lines would go that way. And if there was a lid to it, it would curve back a little bit this way. So I'm going to turn it into just a ball, a mass, a side and a front. So about like that. Now, last thing I'm going to do on this, or only a couple other things, we're going to place an ear. An ear would go up against the edge of the jaw. So we're going to take the edge of the ear here. It reaches a high point, wraps around and over, and the earlobe would be about here. A lot of times there'd be a plane here for the top of the ear. You'd see it as a front plane, and our cheekbone is going to be in here, which is going to come around here, and you'd see it right at this edge. The last couple things I'm going to point out, where the brow comes down here would be here. And where that line comes with the brow, there'd be a construction line that would come over to the chin this way. It's going to give us the big side plane of the side of our head. Cheekbone would be in here, and it would angle this way. I'm going to hatch a little bit of value there, and I'm just going to put a little value in the temporal, and then we're going to leave it. So this is going to move around this way, the edge of our temporal line, and I'm going to hatch in, let's do it this way. I'm going to hatch in these lines this way. And it would only stop right at our cheekbone right there. This would move around. This would be a straight line. And then you get the feel of the jaw in here. So basically, that's some of the few of our big planes within the head. Just going to hatch in a little bit of the side plane. So what we're going to do with this character now is we're going to put a little bit of a neck on him in the upper part of the body. So what you got to do is come up with the neck. I want to talk a little bit about the shoulder girdle. I'm going to take his neck about here, and then I'm going to put an elliptical shape. And I'm going to angle it up just a little higher. So you're going to put an ellipse in. Now, where is this ellipse? You take a cranium length, you come down a cranium length, and we should be at the pit of the neck. So pretty close to what I've got there. And we know that the rib cage in the back is on an angle. So I'm going to do this. So I'm going to bring my front of the sternum bone here and the back of the 7th vertebrae spine there. So we have a feel of, I'm just going to try to get it in there just a little better. So what we need to do is think of an ellipse as a plane, a front, a side, the side we don't see, the back. So front angle, I'm trying to think of the same angle as this, back, front. So in other words, this angle is this angle. I had them all in there right, they'd all be at the same angle, but I know they're not. So anyways, that becomes our opening of the top of the rib cage. All of you should have it in there. Now, what we're going to do is take a cranium length and we're going to measure down once from the pit of the neck. I'm going to make a mark and make another mark. So we've got 2 cranium lengths, and that's going to get us to the base of the rib cage. So there is our first cranium length, our second cranium length, and we're ready to place that. So the rib cage for the head this size is going to come down to here. Now we're trying to imagine this rib cage from the side. So I'm going to try to get a sense for, it would come out a bit. We know the cartilage pulls out a little bit, so something like that. And this is going to pull around and out a little bit in the back, not quite as much as it is in the front. And then it's going to angle itself in here. I might pull this out just a little bit more. So we know that this rib cage sits into the body at an angle. So I'm looking for a bit of an axis line here that does that. So I'm going to have you, as you guys work with yours, do the same. So we're searching for that angle. The rib cage is always in the body at an angle about the way that I've got it now. And so place in a large shape, but you should have marked it off. This should be pretty close. I'm going to check it one more time. You check yours. Never pays. Never hurts to check it a couple of times. Okay, looks real good. So now we know this is the break for the sternum. Now, we're looking at this thing as if I'm looking down at, well, on this case, I might have to narrow this ellipse just a tad bit now that I look at it. So this ellipse of the top of the rib cage, I'm just going to narrow it a little bit. I want the angle to do what I've got it doing. It's got to go there, and it's got to come up here, but I just have it a touch too wide. There we go. It's a little better. So, what we're going to do is this angle for the chin, I want to keep it in mind, and we're going to think of, first, if this egg had a form to it, what would the side be? So since it's not a block like we worked on the other day, I'm imagining now an angle coming through a little bit on an angle like this. So this angle being parallel to this angle. So if I do that, do this, they should be pretty close on your drawing as well. So I'm trying to get a sense of now the top of this egg shape. So the top of this egg shape would start around here. So you're trying to come up with where is the side of this thing? Where is the front of it from this perspective? So try to draw in a construction line. So I'm thinking of if there was a light coming from this side, this would be lit. This side of it would be in shadow. This is roughly the shoulder edge. Okay, I think it's pretty close. I think I'm going to leave it. Now is what I'm going to do is we're going to think about the chest as a male figure as kind of a large curved paving block. Like if there was a slight curve to this, I got to keep in mind my front and a little bit of my angle going this way, and you will too, but this angle would do this. And this would come out. And if we watch this here, the underplane, we're going to bring this across. And now we got to imagine this coming across the form of the rib cage and around. So you got to feel this line going over the rib cage. So I'm trying to keep a little bit of an angle, Okay, so trying to reduce here this, the top of the pectoral muscle into one large mass. This would come this way. This is the underplane here, so this would have an angle to it eventually. And then this is going to move around and curve through. And this somewhat, in this perspective, would go underneath. So you would see it looking like this. Now, these construction lines over the egg, I'm going to get rid of. And so we can see the form. And so this is this way. This is the underplane. Again, there's a thickness to the pectoral muscle. I'm trying to watch the plane break here. And again, the slight turn to the upper part of the body like this. These angles should meet. Right. Okay, good. Now, our new center line is here. So this is now the center line of the body. And now we're going to run a bold center line this way, and it would come around the rib cage like this. So there's our center. And you got to get the sense for the contour line, how it crosses over the form, down and around. This is all about thinking about how forms curve. Now, this is the feel of the pectoral muscle in a mass form. And is what I'm going to do, and is what you're going to have to watch on the up-and-coming poses that you're to draw. We need to watch this angle of the clavicle bones. And is what's going to happen. What happens on this side, we know we've reduced these already to angles that look like this as the top of a box, if you remember back. We've reduced those to tops of boxes. This plane now is this plane, but we do know that this plane is on an angle. So we know that the 7th vertebrae spine is high. And so I'm going to watch this as now a shape. And here's our 7th vertebrae spine. I'm going to make a dot there. And is what we're going to do is carry this line through to this side, and this one over to this side. So there's a surface up there. So we have a top plane. This is known as the shoulder girdle. And this angle would be about where I've got it. I'm going to make it just a touch bigger. Is what I have to watch is my angle, because I'm off to the side, so my angles are hard to achieve. I'm going to rub this stuff out through there, just so that you can kind of see now what's going on, okay? So now we have a plane there. We know the feel of the neck, the cylinder of the neck meets in here. And this shoulder now would curve this way, would curve down. So now we've got a top plane to it. So when you're drawing from the model, we've got to know this angle. There's a plane there. There's going to be a plane break. This is going to look pretty curved to everybody, but you can square it off by watching this angle to this angle and how this form loops around. Okay. Is what would happen then from here. This is the chromium process. If I put just a very little more detail to this, which I'm going to, especially for those of you who are in intermediate and advanced, I want you to consider this. I'm going to curve this angle of the pectoral muscle down a little bit here. Make it a little more curved. But is what would happen here with this clavicle is it's very curved here. I'm going to put a big curve. Very curved there. And then it makes an S curve. So it comes back, comes up the way I've got it. So this is angling up. And then it makes its turn down and meets where I've got it. And it sits in here like this. Again, for the advanced people, I'm wanting you to watch the curve of this bone, because this is what's going to give us the curve ultimately to the upper part of the shoulder, which takes a curve to it ultimately. I'm not going to worry about the one back here. I'll just gesture in a little bit of something. But this deltoid muscle now is going to connect to the chromium process, which would be here, connecting to the spine of the scapula. So I'm going to connect the deltoid muscle. It would come out, doesn't swell out too much, but then it swells up lower, and I'm going to pinch it in. And then it's going to connect to this edge of the chromium process, and it's going to pinch itself in about a third of the way down the arm, about where I've got it. It's going to come around. These things are bound into bands like that. So this will do that. The outside, this then of the, actually there's a band to the pectoral muscle that connects on this third of the clavicle, especially for the advanced people. That would be in there like that, tucks up against it. It makes a plane break right there, so there's an angle. It wraps around this way, this muscle. It's doing that. And then the inside of the bicep muscle, I'm going to place it here. And I'm going to put the outside, just outside of the deltoid, which it would do. So I'm just going to put a front plane to this. And a side plane. So I'll have a plane break right there. Okay. So anyways, trying to show you guys a little bit with the plane breaks. So then we have our construction of our mass. The only other thing on this with its structure, again for the advanced people, we're going to come back to this stuff. There'd be a front to the neck, a little triangle here for the on that angle, and it would come down for the front of the opening of the neck. And of course we know that underneath the neck, this would be the hyoid bone. And again, for those of you who are advanced, the beginning, I'm mostly interested in that structure. That line would connect. There's a muscle that comes through here, the mastoid muscle. I'm just going to stroke it in and place it in there. So that would angle in, and there'd be one on the other side as well. So the neck would angle in, and this would angle through. Okay, so those pieces are in place. The trapezius muscle, for those of you who are advanced, again, the beginning, I'm mostly interested in just the structure of the bigger forms. Again, the beginning students, I'm not after the clavicle bone, I am after the generalization of it. The block forms is what I'm after from you. Those that are in intermediate and advanced, I need you to think a little beyond that, because I'm hoping most of you understand some of this. I know those that were in my anatomy class will. The trapezius muscle will be here, comes from behind the ear, and it picks up that line, it rides along it, has a nice curve, and then there's a separation right here, connects to the clavicle, and then this muscle, as all of you know, all of you seen yourself in the model, there's a curve here, it goes that way. So anyways, that's our upper part of our body. On the video, I am going to be having you watch a video by Ron Lemon in light of all of this as well. And he's going to talk about spiraling gestures, but just in passing, I'm going to have you guys kind of start to watch the curve of this. The reason I use the curved paving block is a person's chest does this. There's a curve to it. It's not flat like a block. It does that. This underplane has a strong cut to it. And it would do that, and there's a thickness to that pectoral muscle. And then, of course, these lines are going to roll over its form, and then these are going to come back and roll over this way. So you want to watch the plane breaks and the subtle lines that might be on them. This is our big plane break. This is our perspective center line that all of you have to watch, beginning and intermediate. And the rest of you watch the other subtleties. So I'm going to leave that, and is what I want to show you is kind of a seated figure, and I want to start off this figure about here, and I'm going to start it, say, about there. So those who want to draw along with me with this is what I would suggest is to do as I'm doing and start with a vertical line. Our vertical line is going to represent through the pit of the neck and where it falls, and that's important. Plus it's going to tell us a lot about where our halfway point is on all of this. So I'm going to find the halfway point of this figure, and I'll mention to you where it is. So if I take from there to there, you want the midway point. That's very close. So this will work good for our halfway point. On the seated figure now, this halfway point is at the top of her thigh, is where I'm thinking of it. I am going to break this up, not this part of it, from the top of the head to the midway point, which rather than pubic bone now, it's the top of thigh. This wouldn't be exactly a half and half measure. I'm going to place the shoulders, but I'm going to keep the torso here bigger than the head, but kind of looking down on this a little, I think. So I think that would be a good placement for it. So if any of you are drawing, I'm going from the halfway point on my line, keeping the top part. If I doubled it, I'd be up to there. So this part's a little bit smaller. Okay. So I'm going to think of it that way. If I divide this in half, this is my halfway point of the whole figure. This is my shoulder lines. This is the top of the head for the most part. If I break this up in half between the shoulder lines and the top of the thigh, I would come up with where it's a female figure, so it will be where the nipples of the breast would be. So that would be a pretty close measurement. So what we're going to do is like this figure, and that's why we wanted to take a look at that first. I'm going to put a slight angle to this, going down this way. And what I'm going to do is put that plane here at the top. So this is the shoulder girdle with a slight angle to it. Okay. Now I'm going to try to get this a little more accurate to what I'm thinking. I'm keeping it a little longer on the left than I have it on the right. So I think that size would work. So all of you know what this is. Our tops of our boxes look like that. Now we're putting a slight angle up. We're adapting it to the 7th vertebrae spine, so there's a tilt to it, right? So now what I'm going to do is think from here, like what we did with our formed torsos. This is the breast, roughly. So I'm going to bring it down, say, I'm going to imagine maybe the base of the rib cage to about here. And now I'm going to come out to the top of the thigh. We're going to bring it to here. I'm going to go for, now this is, what I'm going to show you is going to be very interesting for you guys to do, especially drawing one when you have a seated figure, and what to do with the legs coming out at you. Is what we do is we imagine the leg gone. I'm going to put a leg right in here in a minute. So I'm cutting off her leg, and now I'm going under her leg, and there's a slight angle to everything. So I have to put a slight angle to everything. So this angle would do this, see. And I'm cutting off her leg, and I'm trying to imagine now where this is, trying to keep it roughly equal. So this would be the turn of the block of it. So this would be the front of her lap. I'm going to make it a little longer, I think, a little wider. And it would do this. And so the rib cage would come this way. And now the feeling of the pelvis and the block would pull out. And I'm trying to get this wider like this. So this is my plane break. I'm going to lock it down right about there. So I'm going to tighten up that simple construction shape just so all of you can see it. I'm using the feel of where the rib cage is. This is going to be the bottom in a minute as I'll place it in. Cutting off the legs, cutting off the front of the legs. The legs are going to come out this way. This is a plain break for the leg, but I got to get it a little more in perspective, so I'm going to narrow this even more. So it would do something like this. Okay. Now, when you're doing these simple constructions, if a figure is seated, you cut off the leg and you imagine front of her body. This is going back in space, side of her body. Works out really nice, you guys, if you can kind of think this way. This opening of the rib cage, like the opening of the rib cage over here, I'm putting it on an angle, as you can see. So I'm going to place it in here. So there it is. Try to get it a little darker so all of you can see it. So there's the opening. Our seventh vertebrae spine starting to form the top of the shoulder girdle in here. I'm going to take from there and begin to construct a little bit of the rib cage in this whole thing. So place, feel free to do it this way. You know, I've kind of showed you this way already. Works out nice. Our center line, I'm going to bring it out over here a little bit. Stomach and center of the body, I'm going to curve it to about here. So there's a slight turn. So what I'm doing is watching my center line. With that feel of my center line coming out that way a little bit, is what I'm going to do is my leg is going to start from up here. I'm going to imagine now a little top plane, might be hard for you to see. And the thigh is going to be in here. So there'd be a cross section in here. So I'm going to move this over ever so little because it seems to be cramped. Let's use that as my center. Okay. So this is the cross section. If I cut off the leg at the top of the thigh, it would look like this. All right. This one, here's the center of the body. The thigh would come up, say, about here. And then from that center, it would come over. I have to watch this angle and this angle, make sure they're about the same. So I got to keep that and all the rest of you the same. This would wrap around the form like this. So the cross section of this leg, if I was to cut it off, would be in here like this. So follow me. We're chopped off the legs. Now we're looking at the thickness of the legs. Okay? So there we go. That's how they're going to be placed in there. So what we're going to do is take this leg, and I'm going to bring it out about to here. Now, there's a lot of ways we can do this. One way, you can find your center line and you can begin to work with the ellipse and how that would be cut off. I could do that with it. This one, I'll make these a little darker in a minute so you can see them. This one, this is the top of the leg. It's starting to work as a cross section now. This next one, this leg is coming out at us. So, is what you do when a leg is coming out at you, it's like drawing a bottle. So it's a cross section. So this is the knee. This is where the knee would be. I'm making it, it's a little lower. Here's the bottom of the gluteus maximus we drew through. So I'm placing it like a bottle. This is the larger one behind. It would angle out this way a little bit. This becomes a plain break. This becomes my new side. It angles down a little bit. It's coming lower than this line I have drawn that way. So what happens with it now is it starts to come out. So I'm going to get rid of these simple construction lines so that you can just see the overlapping ellipses. So now we've got the overlapping ellipses in place. This becomes our plane break right here. This would be another plane break there. and that will start to bring out the form as we start to construct it. So I'm imagining this, say the heel of the foot coming this way. So I'm going to take this leg and just generalize it down and say if this is my angle, and say this is the heel of the foot here, I'm going to imagine through the foot for a moment and say the angle is going to go this way. So what I'm doing is just coming with a simple, like we did with our simple lines, concave, convex. I'm going to make this a strong concave for a moment. The heel would pull out this way. This is coming through this way. Sometimes drawing the bottom of a foot is a nice way to resolve it. Now, this is coming this way. Our top of the foot is going to be here. So place a plane break right there. And then from there, the top is going to gracefully flow to here. So if you have the plane break here, and I'm going to just clean up these lines a little bit so they make a little more sense. And then we connect the top of the foot this way to my construction line. You can get the feel, especially once this comes from behind and becomes pretty straight. You can get the feel of the angle of the foot. This would turn around eventually and we'd have an ankle. Now, I like to kind of pull the muscle out of this and imagine where that would be, and it would just kind of gracefully flow in here. And it would start to give me the side of the foot. I'm going to go after the other one, and then we'll show you a little bit of, so this one here, heel about there, this heel is going to be a little higher, and we'll put it in maybe about somewhere in that placement. So out of that, this muscle would swell and come in. This side would be almost straight, and of course it would come to the feel of our foot, and of course the high point of the foot in the front, and again, like the other one, just kind of gracefully angle it out. I'm going to make it just a little shorter, it feels a little big. So we're going to talk a lot about feet eventually, and we'll be more specific with them, but right now just trying to get you to think of plane breaks and how those plane breaks work. And again, if you draw through like this is the heel on the other side. This is the heel through the foot. If I do that, I can imagine this connecting, and then where that would connect to the bottom of the foot. And so again, it's a lot like doing a box, see? So what I want to do is kind of complete this and then show you a little bit of form on top of it. So what we're going to do is place a head. And so I'm going to imagine the angle of this head, see a slight angle going down, so I'm going to place it about here. And there's a lot of lines there, so I'm going to make it darker. So I'm going to place the chin. That's the angle of the chin, that one little dark mark paralleling the shoulders. With that, I'm going to angle this head out this way. And what I'm going to do is just come up with a front plane. So I'm going to think of it like the front of a box, but if I have this angle and this angle of the hairline, I'm going to bring it down a little lower because it's going to look a little big. So I'm going to do that. Now this is the front plane of a box, and you can see it's turning because of its rhomboid shape. So I'm going to get rid of the things drawing through. So there's the front of it. So you just think of a box, but a plane. But get these angles, this angle, this angle. I'm going to imagine the top of her head coming through, and just that very simple shape. I'm going to make it a touch smaller. I don't want to let the mass of her head exceed the line I have there because it's going to look too big. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit. Shrink it just a little bit. And again, that similar shape that I showed you at the very beginning with gestures, that simple sailboat shape, works beautifully. So now I've got a form to it. Before I didn't show you these three lines. Now we've got this line, and this line. This one would follow suit because it's got to be a parallel line to that. And then we know the angle would do this and come around. So that's going to give us our general mass. I'm going to add a few other things to it once I seem to get it in the right place. It still seems a little big, but I'm going to leave it like that. So that would do that. The feel of her eyes would roll along this way. And so if that was going this way, now we know the head goes this way. Now this is the wonderful thing of the construction using blocks. If the eyebrows are going this way, like the hairline, that would put this center line here, offset it a little bit. So that this would be our feel to our top of our form. Therefore, the top of the ear, because the ear is going to follow the eyebrow, so now we know it's tilted, so this angle has got to go up to go to this line, which tells us the ear is now going to sit here. So I'm going to place it in with this charcoal. It would go behind this line like this. I'm going to put it in as a simple ellipse, but watching its angle. So doing that with it. So now the ear would be in the right place. And again, we're going to talk a lot more about heads. This would come around. This would make a turn somewhere about here. This would be darkened. And then a nose would start to come out. And I'm just going to keep it real simple. I'm not going to develop this whole thing. But that would do that. So therefore the jaw would be here and coming around the way we've got it. Some of us like to take this line of the plane break here and then run it this way like a mask shape, going from this to this from this angle. I'm going to darken it so you can see it. When we talk more about heads, I'll bring this out more clearly. This form would do that, and that would do that, like a mask shape. And then it comes around. It's a lovely way to do it. The angle of the jaw would be there. The angle of the jaw would be there, and the turn would be here. So it puts in all of our placements according to the form that's underneath. So then we know that the neck is coming from here, and it would flow in this way into the upper part of the body where I've got this placed. So this is going to do this. And if I darken it a little bit, the curve of the neck would do that and come down to where we've got it, right? So that would be our cylinder of our neck, and everything should be in the right place. This is going to come along. I'm going to widen it a little bit for the arm. So there'd be a curve up here. I'm going to pull the arm out just a little bit. And so then this arm would come in. I'm going to bring it to about here, with the elbow usually comes to the base of the rib cage. I'm going to carry this across the thigh. The inside will be here. I'll darken these lines in a minute. And that would come through. This line would come over probably to about there. So I'll darken it, get rid of some of my lines underneath. So this is going to flow through. Again, these kind of Gumby figure lines you can use. And so then you got the feel of where the arm would be. This curve would come out and around. Eventually there'd be a plane break here. I'm going to place it in, and that would come through. I'm going to get rid of some of my lines underneath, and I'm going to just put a simple direction of a hand on there. So this arm would be here. top of the wrist would come across. There'd be a little bit of a side. There'd be an angle. And this hand would go this way and this way. This would bend out, and knuckles would be in here. So we're just going to keep it real simple as a simple blocking. This will come, this arm will be here. Is what I do want to do on this little figure before I show you a little bit with the planes and conclude it. I gotta move my charcoal up a little bit. So the pectoral muscle would be here. It would follow my construction line like when we did these triangles. So I better use the darker charcoal. So the pectoral muscle would be here. This is the angle of the breast that we set up. So when you do the feeling of the female figure with the breast, you go from one nipple to the other, get the angle of the pectoral muscle, bring out to wherever the furthest point is from the rib cage, and then do the bottom plane. That will follow around here, loop itself around, and then it'll hit the pectoral muscle here. So we always go for the high point of the form first, and then the low point underneath after. So you're looking for the angle of the pectoral muscle, which is this here, of course. If there's a female figure, the breast would now pull out of it around this way. I'm not going to place it on there, but this is the pectoral muscle, so this is doing that. So all of those pieces are now in place. Our center line looks like it's going to be about there. And our opening of a rib cage is going to be in here and here. Sometimes we can connect these lines right on through like this, which is a nice thing to do, as we've talked about in the past. This can go this way. The arm goes to the base of the rib cage. Turn it into a cylinder. The lower arm's a little wider. And that would be reduced to a cylinder. So, the last thing I'm going to show you with this little figure, because I know our time's getting away here, is plane breaks. So this is a plane break. We're looking for the point that's the closest to us, or what we call the high point. And then the lines that you will be doing, these are cross contours. You're going to be looking at a video, and it will show you spiraling gestures, which is done more rapidly than this, but I want you to learn both. Ron Lemon is amazingly good at that technique as gestures, as you'll see, and you'll be able to pick up and work as he is. So that arm would go down to there, and then the lower arm is going to begin to make its curve this way. And there'd be a plane break here, so these lines would begin to follow over that form, giving us the feel of that cylinder. So we're looking at the plane break, crucial, of where the closest point of the form is. Sometimes there's a couple of them, like this one, the plane is moving this way. This one, it's coming down this way. This is coming over this way. So you're going to search those out. This lower leg, the cylinder, would be in there this way, and there'd be a bone in here, and it would be wrapping around, and then the muscle. And so you wrap it around, and you pick up the feeling of the tibia bone and how it wraps around. So you can pick those things up. The bone that's in there, it's got a curve to it, high point, and you wrap it through. This is going to come ultimately for a top of our foot. So there'll be a top and eventually an ankle that would be in there. And the heel will come out. So there'll be a top plane, and that top plane will then be fouled. So you're, again, searching those out. This one, sometimes in these ellipses, like if you're drawing through like that, then you can be searching for the next ones. Some of us, or in some books, they'll show you to put a ball in here. Sometimes if there's a ball in there for the joint, it'll tell you which way this ellipse is going. So it's going up like this. And then our plane brakes that are sitting in there, I would have to watch the high one on the leg that's here, and there'd probably be a lower one, and then these are going to bring out the top of the leg, and as they begin to echo the feel of the cylinder, of course, as they loop themselves around. Our center line, and of course the stomach is going to curve back like this, so you pick that up. So basically it's the same process all the way through. This line broke up the top of our foot, so it gave me a nice plane break in order to place on the top of the leg and the foot. The tibia bone, there'd be a plane break in there, and we would then work breaking those down. So watch the angles, be careful if there's a high point. You can be pretty precise with these things as you work with them. We'll put some hair on her head. There we go. Now she looks better. Okay. So anyways, that's our little seated figure. I'm going to do one last real quick sketch, and hopefully you guys aren't falling asleep. One last quick sketch is what we're going to do is, I'm not going to spend much time with this. I'm going to put a ball here. I'm going to do a legs, just a pair of legs quick. This is representing the pelvis. I'm just going to, simple ball. So this is the opening of where the waist would be. So we're going to dissect this. We can do a cross section, right?